Have you ever wondered how witchcraft and occult practices survived the harsh scrutiny of the Inquisition? The gates of our secret garden are now open. Welcome to the monastery lost in the woods, that hidden place where you and me are going to sit together and have a chat in peace. Tonight, under a full moon, we're going to talk about the survival of occult practices throughout the cruelty of the Inquisition. It's a question that has puzzled historians and intrigued enthusiasts for centuries. We're talking about a time when Europe was in the grip of the Inquisition, a powerful force that spanned several centuries. Its influence was most notable during the late Middle Ages and early Renaissance periods. Its mission? To eradicate witchcraft and occult beliefs. This was a time of intense persecution, where fear was a tool wielded by the authorities with devastating effect. Yet, these practices didn't just vanish into the annals of history. No, they adapted, they evolved, and they survived. They operated in the shadows, away from prying eyes, and often right beneath the noses of the Inquisition. But how did these practices persist in the face of such intense persecution? Let's journey back in time to find out. The first key to survival was secrecy. In a world where the mere whisper of witchcraft could lead to severe punishment, the practitioners of the occult adapted to survive. They operated under cloaks of darkness, hidden away from the prying eyes of the church and state. This covert existence was not a choice, but a necessity, a means to escape the ruthless clutches of the Inquisition. They held their meetings and rituals in secret, often in the depths of the night when the rest of the world was asleep. Their gatherings were shrouded in mystery, their rites performed with an air of hushed reverence. These clandestine meetings served as the lifeline for their beliefs, a safe haven in a world that sought to extinguish their practices. Even as the authorities prowled, hunting for those who defied their edicts, these occultists persevered. They found strength in their shared beliefs, their secret rituals, their hidden world. In the shadowy corners of society, these clandestine practices thrived. Next, we find a clever strategy of camouflage within the dominant religion. Quite a fascinating approach, isn't it? This is where the concept of syncretism comes into the picture. It's a term that refers to the blending of different belief systems, and in this context, it's all about the melding of occult practices with Christian rituals and symbols. Now, why would practitioners of witchcraft do this, you may wonder? Well, the answer is simple: to avoid suspicion. By incorporating Christian elements into their rituals, these practitioners could continue their occult activities while appearing outwardly as devout Christians. Quite a strategy, don't you think? Imagine a practitioner of the occult, standing in a congregation, reciting prayers and taking part in all the Christian rituals. To the outside world, they are nothing more than an ardent follower of Christianity. But behind closed doors, they continue their occult practices, their faith unshaken, their beliefs undeterred. It's not just about the rituals either. Elements of folk magic, herbalism, divination, and other occult practices were also woven into their Christian practices. Imagine a witch invoking divine forces while reading psalms, or a diviner using biblical verses for prophetic interpretations. The lines between the old and new beliefs blurred, creating a blend that was unique yet familiar. But let's remember that syncretism was not just about survival. It was also a form of resistance. By merging their practices with Christianity, practitioners of the occult subtly defied the authorities that sought to suppress them. They found a way to keep their beliefs alive, despite the intense pressure to conform. So, while the Inquisition was in full force, seeking to eradicate witchcraft and occult practices, these practitioners found a way to persist. They adapted, they evolved, and they survived. They found a way to keep their traditions alive in the face of adversity and persecution. And so, in the guise of devout Christians, these practitioners kept their old beliefs alive. They remained true to their beliefs, even as they hid in plain sight. Quite a tale of resilience and ingenuity, wouldn't you agree? In the remote corners of the continent, witchcraft and occult practices found refuge. Where the reach of the Inquisition was limited, the old ways could persist, and they did so with a stubborn tenacity. The rural isolation of these areas provided a protective cloak for these practices, allowing them to continue in the open air, beneath the stars, and within the hidden groves. Often, These rural regions were far removed from the bustling urban centers where the church and state held sway. The authorities' eyes rarely ventured this far, allowing these practices to flourish, albeit with a degree of caution. The isolation of these areas was not just geographical, it was also social and cultural, with communities often maintaining a degree of autonomy from the rest of society, preserving their traditions and beliefs from generation to generation. These rural communities were the keepers of the old ways. They held on to practices that were woven into the fabric of their lives, practices steeped in the natural world around them, in the cycles of the moon, the turn of the seasons, and the rhythms of the land. These were not just beliefs, they were ways of life, ingrained in the very soil they tilled, the herbs they gathered, and the charms they crafted. Despite the church's efforts to suppress them, these traditional beliefs, rooted in pre-Christian traditions, remained resilient. They were passed down through oral stories and secret networks, surviving not just on the fringes of society, but also at its heart. These were not practices that could be easily uprooted. They ran deep, like the roots of an ancient tree, reaching back into time immemorial. In these isolated pockets, the old ways held their ground. The flames of tradition, though flickering, never quite extinguished. They continued to burn, casting an ethereal glow over these secluded communities, a testament to the enduring power of belief, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, a testament that, despite the fear and the persecution, the old ways could not be entirely eradicated. They survived, they adapted, and they persisted. In these isolated pockets, the old ways held their ground. Even under the watchful eyes of the Inquisition, resistance was not futile. Against the oppressive force of the Inquisition, there were those who dared to openly defy the authorities. These brave individuals and groups formed what we now know as resistance movements. They operated covertly, shrouded in secrecy, engaging in acts of defiance against the authorities while continuing to practice their occult rituals. These resistance movements were not just about preserving their way of life, but also about protecting the very essence of their beliefs and traditions. They were the silent warriors of their time, risking their lives to ensure that their knowledge and practices were not lost to the relentless persecution of the Inquisition. But how did they manage to keep their practices alive in such hostile conditions? The answer lies in literature and grimoires. Despite the intense efforts to suppress them, occult texts and grimoires continued to circulate among practitioners. These were no ordinary books. They were powerful tools that contained instructions for performing rituals, casting spells, and other magical practices. These grimoires were passed down secretly from one generation to the next, often hidden in plain sight or disguised as harmless texts. The circulation of these texts provided a lifeline for the practitioners, a beacon of hope in their struggle against the oppressive forces of the Inquisition. In the shadows of secrecy, these texts became the silent teachers, the unseen guides that helped the practitioners navigate the treacherous waters of the Inquisition. They were the torchbearers of the occult traditions, ensuring that the flame of their beliefs continued to burn bright, even in the darkest of times. These resistance movements and the circulation of occult literature played a crucial role in the survival and persistence of witchcraft and occult practices during the Inquisition. They were the silent heroes, the keepers of the flame, who ensured that their beliefs and practices would survive to see another day. In the face of danger, these brave souls kept the flame of their beliefs burning. At the fringes of society, magic found a way. In many communities, certain individuals known as folk healers or cunning folk held the reins of occult practices. These individuals, often revered and respected, practiced forms of magic and herbalism that were interwoven with witchcraft and the occult. They served their communities in ways that were both practical and mystical, offering services such as healing, protection, and divination. Their practices were rooted in ancient wisdom passed down through generations. They were the keepers of secrets, the bearers of tradition, and the preservers of knowledge. While some were persecuted as witches, many cunning folk managed to operate within the margins of society, their invaluable services providing a shield against suspicion. In this way, they kept the spirit of the occult alive, a flame flickering in the shadows, undeterred by the winds of persecution. Through their invaluable services, these individuals kept the spirit of the occult alive. So, despite the Inquisition's best efforts, the occult persisted. The resilience of these practices is a testament to their adaptability and the tenacity of their followers. Practitioners found ways to preserve their traditions, even under the threat of persecution. They held their rituals in secret, far from the reach of the authorities, and they cleverly disguised their beliefs within the framework of Christianity, a practice known as syncretism. In remote rural areas, these ancient traditions were maintained more openly, demonstrating the limitations of the Inquisition's power. And let's not forget the brave individuals and groups who actively resisted, covertly defying the authorities while continuing their occult practices. The circulation of occult texts, the persistence of folk healers and cunning folk, all underscore the enduring influence of the occult. In the face of adversity, the occult not only survived but thrived, leaving a lasting legacy that continues to fascinate us today. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. The gates of our secret garden are now closed.